Better shut the door. Don't want anyone hearing our hot takes.
Hello and welcome to yet another video that you didn't ask for.
No, what are we doing? Who is going to stop us?
And we are doing today Crowded House, which was, we talked in the last video. If you haven't seen the slow dive ranking and you're interested in checking some slow dive out, I would recommend that. Very personal video for us both.
Yeah.
We both got quite into our emotions regarding that music, which was quite cool. And so I picked slow dive, and Sam went and picked Crowded House, which are one of your favourite bands of all time.
Definitely up there, one of my favourites.
I'll leave it up to you.
I've been familiar with Crowded House for the vast majority of my life. I sort of working my way in with the big hits like Weather With You, Crowded House, hearing them on the radio, until I started exploring my love for music a lot more later in life, in my adult life, and diving into some of their stuff. I got the Greatest Hits CD and I went through it all and I loved pretty much all of it. And then we started doing this project and doing all the deep dives, and I was just like, well, we got to do Crowded House then. I'd already deep dived it, and so I was ready to do that again.
Yeah, 7 albums isn't bad.
No.
It's more albums than slow dive, but 7 is still quite.
And if we'd done this like a year or two ago, it would have only been 6.
Yeah.
So sorry to overload you there.
They did a 2021 album, but they started out in 1986. Neil Finn, lead singer, top lad.
Yeah.
We like Neil Finn. Although the peak of his career was the Message to My Girl music video. Let's be real.
If you haven't watched that, you should.
It's hilarious.
It's great.
It's hilarious. So, yeah, I mean, for me, Crowded House was mainly through you, which is funny. It's the opposite of slow dive. Where I think I did know a couple of songs, but I didn't know that I knew them, if that makes sense.
You didn't know they're by Crowded House.
I knew Don't Dream It's Over and I knew Fall at Your Feet, and that was it. But I didn't know them. I'd never gone out of my way to listen to them, I just heard them, which are 2 of their more big hits. And obviously Weather With You kind of gets a lot of play, but I feel like I kind of avoided it before actually diving into their stuff. And the amount of times where we'd meet up and we'd be in the car and you'd have the Crowded House best of CD on, and there would be a certain song that you'd always skip, which we'll get to.
Yes, don't worry. You're not going to miss out on that goss.
So, I'm excited to talk about it. And as we said, I went first in slow dive because you were giving the surprises. So I think you should go first for Crowded House.
Yes. Right. Well, kicking off with number 7, because there are 7 albums on this discography, is Dreamers Are Waiting. The most recent album, which I think that, they've had their time by this point. They've been away for a while. They recently got back together just before COVID. And they released this album in 2021. And it's great that Neil Finn's sons are also talented musicians and they've come on board to help with the band. But I just didn't feel it really. And it only scored a 5. It's just,
which is about as low as you'll go for.
Because I love them so much. But it was just, there were a few good ones. As Real Life Woman was probably the best that album got to, but even then it doesn't scratch up to their hits. I mean, it's like we said with Depeche Mode, it's like when you go so high, it's so hard to compete and get up there.
Yeah.
So I think they'd peaked already, and it's not great. But I really do respect the fact that they are still making music, and it's great. It's good fun.
Cool. Yeah. I don't have that at the bottom. My number 7, which Sam, you might have guessed this from the songs you showed me from this album. I wasn't impressed. Intriguer from 2010, their last album they sort of had 3 phases in their career. They had their initial phase, then they had a brief comeback, and then now they've made another comeback.
Yeah. Round 3.
Yeah, this is the only one that I would call subpar. I think Saturday Sun is just awful. It's just crap. It's a really bad way to open the album. I really don't like the production or the sound. There's too much going on, and I think Neil Finn's songwriting's at its best when he's doing simple, catchy, heartfelt pop songs. And honestly, he's really trying. Neil Finn channels a lot of Paul McCartney, and he channels a lot of Fleetwood Mac. And this album, he is heavy in the McCartney worship.
Well, he is now in Fleetwood Mac, so
well, there you go.
Sense. He's on this shirt. That's why I'm wearing it. You won't be able to see it on the camera, so it was a lost effort.
He is there. Yeah,
he is there.
You wear that for the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers video as well.
Yeah, Mike Campbell's in it too.
Yeah, his voice isn't as strong, but I don't really think I should put that against him because he can't help that. I feel like it's a bit of a slog. There's a real lack of any songs that I like. And I would also go to 5. I thought about 4 because I really didn't enjoy it, but it's not offensive. It's just bleh. That's my.
So you're settled on 5.
Yeah, that's my review of Intriguer.
Yes,
it didn't intrigue me at all.
It's not quite the Intriguer that it had signed up for.
And I think you could have predicted, because when you did show me songs from it, I was a bit.
Yeah, you were totally off from it,
yeah.
and I sure wouldn't be surprised to you that it's my number 6.
Yeah.
So very nearly synced up there. Yeah, there's definitely been a downward trajectory since they entered the 2010s and 2020s. I did like Amsterdam. I think that's a pretty good song, but just like Real Life Woman, it is kind of lost against the rest of it, and I didn't find it offensive. I've given it a 6. So it is a bit better than Dreamers Are Waiting because it's got a couple more songs that I think, yeah, they're alright, they're pretty good. But still not a great album.
Yeah, and as you will also not be surprised, my number 6 is Dreamers Are Waiting.
Oh!
Which I like a bit more than you, it sounds like. I think overall it's a step up from Intriguer. They sound a bit more enthusiastic. They sound like they actually want to make this album, which I think having Neil Sons involved helped that.
Will be an influence.
I really enjoyed Nick Seymour's... Nick Seymour? Yeah?
The bassist.
Yes. His really melodic bass playing on this album. It really stood out on this one in particular. It might have been how the album was mixed that it sort of came to the front a bit more. It's pretty unremarkable, but it's quite pleasant. It has a nice vibe. I had a nice time listening to it, but there's not much here that I will dive to listen to again. I will say I think they really fucked up on picking the singles. I think the 3 singles are the worst songs on the album.
Yeah.
They're really not good at all.
Yeah.
Whereas there are some quite nice songs here. There's a song that reminded me of The Cure. I can't remember what it was called, but it was the penultimate song on the album.
Don't ask me. Maybe Real Life Woman. That's near the end.
But yeah, it's nice. It's okay. 6 out of 10. I think it's pretty decent, and it sort of leaves behind the weird production choices on Intriguer that I didn't like. So
you're right about the singles.
Yeah.
To the Island put me off the album before it even come out, so that was a bit problematic. I just burnt myself on that hot take.
Not really. I don't think anyone cares about Crowded House's 2021 album Dreamers Are Waiting. Yeah.
Right, so my number 5, there's a pattern here, because it's Time on Earth. At the moment, I'm just in the 2000s, I'm going backwards. But I do want to say that I think Time on Earth are quite a bit better than the last 2. I feel like there was definitely a vibe of them giving tribute to Paul Hester, who had unfortunately taken his own life a year or 2 before, and I feel like it reflected the mood of the band at the time, that they wanted to show that they weren't done with what they built up, but at the same time it wasn't going to be the same. And I do think there are some really good songs on it. I love Don't Stop Now. I like Paul Lamond. Is that from that one? Yeah, it was. And those 2 were really good. And Say That Again. That's not as good as the other 2, but still quite a nice one. So even though it's only 5th, it is quite a bit better than Dreamers Are Waiting and Intriguer, and it gets a 7 from me.
Well, you were just talking about hot takes. I think this is one of the biggest hot takes I've done so far, because on Radio Music, this is the highest rated Crowded House album. My number 5 is Together Alone.
Oh!
Which was the only one I had heard beforehand.
Yes!
Which is their 4th album. I was quite disappointed revisiting this one, I must say. I do think their 90s albums kind of suffer from the CD era effect, which is, well, I think 90s onwards you could argue, because they're all, once you get past the first 2, they all get quite long, and it affects them to varying degrees, depending on how prolific their songwriting is. Together Alone has a lot of filler for me. There's a lot of moments on this album where I'm sort of like, okay, this is a fairly interesting idea, I suppose. And it's a shame because there are some incredibly high highs. Distant Sun, one of their best songs. Pineapple Head is great. There's just some really good stuff. I just think it's quite flawed. And yeah, unfortunately, it slipped to a 7 out of 10 for me.
Wow, that has shocked me.
Yeah.
That has shocked me.
Yeah.
Because that was the one you knew going in.
It's about an hour long, and you honestly could have lost about 15, 20 minutes of it for me. But it's good. It's a good album.
Blimey. Right.
I mean, I'm at a 7 from 5 up, though, so that's...
Yeah. No, that is good.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. I don't want to say too much about what I think about the album before I get there, because it's not next.
Okay.
So I do want to say, though, that these 4 albums are great to me. I do love Crowded House, and these 4 albums are really good. Yeah. I love them from this point on. But my number 4, I suppose this is going to be controversial because it's self-titled Crowded House.
Okay, yeah.
As much as it's got some real bops on it, it does also get a bit strange. I know there is a certain amount of strangeness that comes with Crowded House's sound, but I really do feel like with their opening album, they were still feeling out where they sat on the spectrum, and so they were putting in really good songs like Don't Dream It's Over, Something So Strong, against things that start with yeah. And I do like that song as well. I think that's the one that comes after Don't Dream It's Over.
Yeah.
And I just think it was a little bit haphazard, the way the album was put together, which is to be expected.
It's a debut album.
It is, but I guess I scrutinise a little bit more because Neil Finn had already had quite a bit of a career with Split Ends, and so he should have, to my mind, had a better idea of what he was doing with the album, what he wanted to do that he wasn't doing with Split Ends. That being said, Crowded House, self-titled, has some phenomenal songs, and it definitely gets an 8, a very strong 8. If we were still doing halves, I'd have given it an 8.5, but I'm not willing to round out to a 9. So
that shows how
gets an 8.
well you think of Crowded House, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you might also be looking at it harshly, comparing it to the best debut album of all time, which we did on the Slowdive video. Yeah. So, spoilers.
Yeah. No, it should be spoilers. You should have watched that. You should be on top of it.
Number 4.
I'm joking.
Sorry to break your heart here, Sam. My number 4 is Woodface. Which I kind of echo the same sentiments from Together Alone. However, Woodface has more sustained highs. 4 Seasons in One Day, Fall at Your Feet, It's Only Natural, Weather With You, some amazing songs on here. The singles, basically.
Yeah.
I really, really like the singles. And the whole first half is pretty good, apart from Chocolate Cake, which is just an absolute...
I hate Chocolate
It's
Cake.
a travesty. That's the song we were talking about that Sam skipped. We'll get to it for you.
Yeah,
but
we will.
Chocolate Cake to open the album is just... For me, opening tracks are very important.
As we've explored, same with me.
Yeah, it kind of derails the whole album listening experience. It, again, like Together Alone, it's too long. It's quite disjointed. It not only varies in style, but also quality. But it's that close to an 8 just for those singles, because they're so good.
They are.
But I'm sticking at a 7 for Woodface.
Right.
It's a good album. I just think that it needs a bit more consistency for me, despite having those incredibly high highs.
After agreeing with all the albums on the Slowdive
this
video,
is
a good. It's good. It's good. I think that we've kind of got different things out of this band. But now we're in medal position for me, and my bronze medal goes to Together Alone.
Okay.
I do think that your criticisms are well levelled, though.
Yeah.
However, there are some phenomenal songs on it. I do love Distant Sun. I like Fingers of Love.
Yeah.
Great song. And yeah, I think some of the songs are a bit filler. I think Catherine Wheels goes on a bit too long. And I think Curry Curry is a little bit... And Pineapple Head, I think, it's a bit more silly.
I like Pineapple.
It is a good song. Yeah. It is a good song. I think it's fantastic. I love Crowded House.
Yeah.
These criticisms are like me putting one of my favourite bands under heavy scrutiny. But it's like that's the name of the game. That's what I'm here for. And yeah, that's why it's also got an 8.
Oh, you didn't quite get to a 9 on that.
No, I didn't get to a 9 on Together Alone. I do think that Crowded House and Together Alone, they are kind of battling it out against each other, but I do think that they come more in their stride. They know what they're doing a bit more with Together Alone. But I do agree with your criticisms. It's not their best. That's why it's only just managed to hit bronze. I suppose they're kind of tied in my heart, but they can't tie in our format.
Yeah. So my number 3, which is going to be the surprise of the video, I think, Time on Earth.
Yeah.
Which I was stunned at how much of a good time I had with this album. Because I'll be honest, Woodface and Together Alone, I enjoyed those albums, but they were frustrating experiences because it would be a 10 out of 10 song and then just a song that would just completely okay, this is doing nothing for me. And then, an amazing song. Is okay. Whereas Time on Earth, it doesn't quite have a Distant Sun or a 4 Seasons in One Day or a Don't Dream It's Over, but it has sustained highs.
Yeah.
It's consistently great. You know, songs like Nobody Wants To, Even a Child.
Nobody Wants To, I forgot about that.
She Called Up, song. I like a lot. You Said Paul Lamond is a great one. I could list pretty much every song on that album. I like it. It's just, it does, the only reason it's not higher is it's an album that came out in 2007, so in the noughties, for me, we noticed this with Depeche Mode as well, it's not my favourite, like we said about Sounds of the Universe, it's not my favourite sound, that noughties production sound.
It's very distinctive, isn't it?
It's hard to describe, but I'm not a big fan of it. But despite that, the songwriting is just so good. Really catchy, great vibes. I love the extra elements they add to the song. There's loads of string sections, trumpets and horns and stuff, a lot of piano, a lot of guitar. Just a very diverse, cool album, and I think it's really underrated. I think it's a great comeback. So my number 3 is Time on Earth as an 8 out of 10.
Right, fab. Right, well, now we're in difficult territory because these last 2 albums have been really pitting it out against each other for me. Yeah. So they've got a lot of plays. And you know what? They're both fantastic. And the bronze medal does go to Temple of Low Men.
Silver medal.
Yeah, silver medal. The silver medal goes to Temple of Low Men because I think that while they have definitely found their stride more from the self-titled, the great songs aren't quite as catchy to me as the great songs from Woodface. So, yeah, I know. Think what you will. However, that is where I stand on Temple of Low Men.
I can see it.
That being said, absolutely fantastic album, and it's only got better in time for me. I absolutely love I Feel Possessed. I love why they escape my mind. I Feel Possessed, In the Lowlands, great song. Love This Life, fantastic song. Those 3 are just chef's kiss moi. Great songs, but not quite worthy of the top position, but it does get a 9.
9, yeah. So my number 2, you've messed it up, Sam. We could have lined up. We haven't lined up at all on this, because my number 2 is Crowded House, the debut. I think this might have been your prediction that I would like the earlier stuff more, maybe, or is that not your prediction?
But you threw it with Together Alone, so...
Okay. Crowded House, the self-titled, is probably the most diverse album. A lot of different ideas going on. And it is one of those albums where it's a lot better than Speak and Spell. But it's kind of like Speak and Spell in where the key song is the most famous song. Whereas Don't Dream It's Over. It is their most famous song. It's often considered their best song. I can see why. I was kind of averse to it when I first heard it. I was like, not sure if I love this. But slowly over time, it's really grown in my mind. And it is fantastic. It's kind of one of those undeniable pop songs. Also some great deep cuts on here, like Something So Strong was one of the singles as well. The opening track, Mean to Me, is really fun. Can't Carry On is great. There's some really, really great stuff on here. I don't think, maybe it's just because of the kind of music we listen to, I don't think it's that weird. I don't think weird is the word, I think quirky is the word I would use.
Maybe.
Because it's not weird in a way I'm like, oh, that's a strange idea. It's more, okay, Neil Finn has got a lot of energy. And
he is certainly enthusiastic.
Yeah. So it's less that it's...
That's what I call...
Yeah, it's less that it's weird, it's more that it's quirky, is what I would use. But yeah, there's like a manic energy to these first... Especially this one, more so than Temple of Low Men. But with that, you kind of lose the maturity in the songwriting that you would get later on, which you do get in Don't Dream It's Over, but you kind of don't have as much throughout the album. But I don't mind. It's a great little piece of 80s pop rock, and it's an 8 out of 10. I think it's a great album.
Right, well, now we know who's won out of each of us. So my gold medal does go to Woodface.
Despite chocolate cake.
Despite chocolate. And that is like a big hurdle to overcome. I hate chocolate cake. Hate it. No! However,
It's also like that song. Can we just talk about chocolate cake for a
You
second?
want to talk about chocolate
Because
cake? We'll talk about
it's
chocolate
like,
cake.
It's like musically kind of bad, but it's also the lyrics.
The lyrics don't make any sense.
But they're also just awful.
Yeah.
I don't know, Andrew Lloyd Webber. I'm like, why? What are you on about?
that chorus is insufferable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
However, Weather With You was the first song from Cowdered House I've ever heard.
Really?
And it's the first, and it's still in my heart now. Fall at Your Feet is just. It hits me and it feels like songs really haven't hit me and it feels before. And then once I started doing deep cut, I listened to Whispers and Moans. I listened to There Goes God, As Sure As I Am. And I'm forgetting what they 4 Seasons in One Day.
Yeah.
Big Paul McCartney vibes.
Yeah.
And it's a fun one for me. My mum heard me listening to that song and she was just like, "Oh, all right, you're listening to Paul McCartney." I went, "No, it's Crowded House." And she's like, "Oh, well, it sounds a lot like Paul McCartney." We've always, for the longest time, my mum thought it was Paul McCartney that sang that song. And you know what, I totally get it. It's still only a 9, so again, in my heart, Temple of Low Men and Woodface hold the same space.
And it's good of you that despite your love for the band, you're not giving them a 10 anyway.
No.
Yeah.
No, because Chocolate Cake is the only reason that doesn't get a 10.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Violator, isn't it? Where it's the opening track that put you off giving it a 10.
And it's a shame that we haven't quite synced up, because Temple of Low Men, it at one point was in the top position, but then I re-listened to the songs and it's like, I love the ones that I love from Woodface more than the ones that I love from Temple of Low Men. So unfortunately for this, I still love the albums. Like, it hasn't changed anything in my heart. Woodface has got the gold.
Well, my winner is Temple of Low Men, their second album from 1988.
Fills me with glee, that.
You know what? I kind of figured this would be my favourite because you basically showed me half the album before going into it. And that still didn't stop me from really loving it because you assumed that I knew Better Be Home Soon, and I didn't. So I got to experience that for the first time in the context of the album, which was great. But obviously you mentioned In the Lowlands, which is, they're basically doing an impression of the Smiths, which I loved, obviously, because I love the Smiths. But it's so uncanny. Like, Neil Finn just turns into Morrissey for a song. It's so weird. He's doing so many little Morrissey-isms, if that makes sense. The which way, which way. That's so Morrissey.
It's great.
And it's also got that same sort of driving rhythm that the Smith songs tend to have.
I love that ending to it.
But, I mean, it's just jam-packed with great songs. I Feel Possessed, When You Come, Into Temptation.
Oh, wait, you can't. I forgot about that. Yeah. Fabulous song.
It's absolutely stacked from start to finish. There are a couple tracks that are a bit, again, in that quirky side, which I don't think work. What's it? Mansion in the Slums? That's
I don't like that
not a big fan of that one. So, I mean, it isn't perfect, and it isn't really doing anything groundbreaking.
No.
But in the pop rock genre, this is just such a solid example of it.
In the 80s too.
In the 80s, and it's really, I love it, and it's a strong 8. It's almost a 9. If we're doing halves, it'd be an 8.5.
Right.
But I can't quite justify it being a 9 just because I think I do get what you're saying about the highs not being as high as Woodface, maybe, but it's tough. It's got the nice diverse 80s sounds, and it's just a lot of fun.
I'm pleased. I do think because
I think they
love
have
it.
3 great albums.
Yes.
So
that I'm really pleased that you got as much as you did. However, even if you didn't manage to get to a 9 on any of the albums,
I liked this more than Roxy Music. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
So it's not been Roxy Music fans can rage at me for that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Me too, because I've obviously I had already done the dive into Crowded House, so there's not much that I can say about it that you don't already know, but of course you don't, but you weren't there. So,
I mean, I think it was very rewarding, and I think it's cool that we came up with such different lists as well.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, we did.
Time on Earth was the big shock for me. I was really surprised.
Well, I'm just surprised that Together Alone was so low because you died. You'd already died. That just applies to everything. I listened to a song. I dived. Don't Dream It's Over. No, because you'd already listened to that album. I thought that would be quite high because you did like it at the time,
and I do still like it. It's just I like the other ones more. Basically.
Yeah, it's a pleasant surprise, and I'm glad that Temple of Low Men got so high up in your list because I did think that it was very strongly your vibe, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I still love it. And Woodface and Temple of Low Men, they are in competition, but I stand by my decision to put Woodface at the top, despite Chocolate Cake being an abomination.
Well, it sounds like you've really come to love the deep cuts on the album tracks on there as well, you know.
That's the thing, is that I've really come to
which
enjoy
I wish
the deep cuts.
maybe over time I will get there as well with Woodface, but for me that was just the singles and not much else. But you know, that's why we do this. We have differing opinions, and you know, I feel like I was a bit worried about that Slowdive video because spoilers again, but you should have watched it. We kind of had the exact same list. Not kind of, we did have the exact same list. And
8 out of the 10 songs are the same.
It's good as a reminder that we do have very different tastes at times. So, I was surprised that the top 2 of the 80s, and if you don't know this about me, it's only quite recently I've managed to really get into 80s music, and I've got into it hard. Like, I'm really into it, especially the sort of alternative rock, pop rock kind of stuff that was going on in the 80s. You know, the Smiths, R.E.M., you know, the Replacements.
Yeah, and Crowded House is a bit different from those ones that you've listed. To me,
more similar than you would think. I think they sort of do borrow from people like Fleetwood Mac and Paul McCartney and the Byrds and Tom Petty and those kind of people. I feel like there's a lot of that kind of influence in there.
Yeah.
But you can tell from all these albums that Neil Finn very clearly had a wide array of influences that he pulled from.
Yeah.
In these different ways.
Very talented songwriter.
Oh, that's probably the big takeaway from this for me is Neil Finn as a songwriter. He's great, and his lovely voice as well.
Yeah,
soothing.
He's brilliant. Right.
So yeah, that'll be that. Crowded House done. If you only know Don't Dream It's Over, trust us, there's more to them than that.
Definitely.
And I think they are quite underrated in general within the music listening sphere. I think they kind of get dismissed as a singles band, and I don't think that's entirely fair. I think at times I kind of agree, but I do think that they put out a few really cracking albums.
You'll see with the songs video that's coming up soon that I do appreciate the deep cuts quite as much as the singles. So yeah, definitely worth listening to the big albums if you're willing. Yeah,
and I honestly thought that. That's why Time on Earth was such a shock, because I thought the later albums would be such a slog, because I was just like, oh, we're doing them because they exist. If we could
do a deep dive, you got to do them all. So,
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Tom and Sam Rank a Band.
Tom and Sam Rank a Band.
Well, we talked in the Slowdive video that we were going to do Talk Beatles Genesis. Elliott Smith is coming as well, so add that to your list. That's going to be our first non-band.
An individual artist.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for everything we've got coming up.
Yeah, no.
And look out for the songs video in the next few days. And goodbye.